Hello there, Winston Chan from PortThe.net here. When it comes to motherboard aesthetics, there are few that offer as clean an aesthetic as NZXT. While they might be better known for their sleek PC cases and cool CPU coolers, they do have a small motherboard lineup. This is NZXT's first AMD motherboard, the N7 B550. The main reason why you would get this motherboard is mainly its clean design, which will go extremely well with their cases. NZXT achieves this by incorporating a lot of flat surfaces in its design and a lot of covers to hide surfaces which are, well, not flat. The VRM heatsink have flat surfaces too on the front, which might give you the idea that they have very limited surface area, but the rear of the heatsinks actually have slits cut into them to help dissipate heat better. Meanwhile, over the B550 chipset, you can see the holes in the cover that hide the PCH heatsink. I guess this is why NZXT decided to build a B550 board, because the X570 chipset would produce too much heat for such a closed-up design. Aside from the socket area, the only uncovered areas would be where you need to plug in your cables and of course the PCIe slots. Unlike most motherboards, NZXT went with magnetic attachments to hold the M.2 covers down. This is very nice and I do believe makes for a very easy installation of M.2 drives, especially if you are like me and you don't actually screw down your M.2 SSDs. Yes, I do that. The M.2 heatsinks on my motherboard holds down the drives just fine and my PC works, so your argument is invalid. And that's about it for the outside of the N7 B550. Let's take a deeper dive and take off its clothes. Or armor? Or shielding? Well, basically we want to see what's under the hood. Once all the covers are removed, we get a pretty good look at the N7 B550's components. And there's quite a lot to talk about here, but let's start with the power delivery on this board. The N7 B550 is equipped with a 12+2+2 phase power delivery system with a Renesas RAA 229004 PWM controller handling the vCore and SoC rails. As the controller is not a true 14-phase controller, NZXT used doublers on the back of the board to still offer true-ish 12-phase power versus just pairing up power stages in parallel. The power stages here are the Vishay SIC654DR MOS components, which are rated for 50 amps each. That's plenty of power for any AM4 processor out there. Moving over to the memory slots, we can see that there are the standard 4 DIMM slots here, supporting up to a total of 128GB of memory, or 4 32GB sticks. Official support is up to DDR4 3200 as per AMD's specification. NZXT claims that the N7 B550 can support up to DDR4 4733 while clocking with the latest Ryzen APUs, although it is worth mentioning that their memory QEL only goes up to 4000 MHz kits. Next up, the PCIe slots. The primary one is reinforced to prevent it from getting damaged by chunky GPUs, and it also supports PCIe 4.0x16, which will come from the CPU. Obviously, this only works with AMD's Ryzen 3000 and Ryzen 5000 CPUs. If the N7 B550 is used with the Ryzen APU, you only get PCIe 3.0x16 here. You also get 3 more PCIe slots coming off the chipset, with 2 PCIe 3.0x1 slots and 1 PCIe 3.0x4 slot. The latter features a full-length slot, so you can plug in PCIe X16 devices, although they will only run at PCIe 3.0x4 electrically. Now let's talk about the M.2 slots. The covers here are solely for aesthetics and do not actually contact the M.2 drives for heat dissipation. The first slot is capable of PCIe 4.0x4 speeds, and again, what you put into the socket determines whether you get PCIe 4 or PCIe 3.0. The second slot, however, is only capable of PCIe 3.0x2 and SATA. Speaking of SATA, the N7 B550 provides for 6 SATA slots, although you have to be aware that the second M.2 slot shares its lanes with the 5th and 6th SATA slot, so depending on how you configure your storage setup, you might have to move some SATA drives around if you upgrade to 2 M.2 PCIe drives down the line. And then we have this Wi-Fi card here. The wireless connectivity on this board actually caught me by surprise. The N7 B550 comes with a pre-installed Intel Wi-Fi 6E AX210 card, and this gives you, well, Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.2. Pretty cool of NZXT to use the latest Wi-Fi 6E adapters instead of Wi-Fi 6 ones, which should have been cheaper for them to include with the N7 B550. On the audio end, there's the familiar Realtek ALC 1220 that can handle 32-bit 192kHz audio or 8-channel HD audio. NZXT also built the N7 B550 with a headphone amp, opting to use the Texas Instruments N5532 amp. High-quality Nichicon fine gold caps are used here as well, with them being the choice for most high-end motherboard makers as well. The internal I/O on the N7 B550 is pretty great, with one of the main highlights being the two USB 3.2 Gen 1 or USB 3.0 headers, which will provide for a whopping 4 USB 3.0 ports on your front panel, which will be excellent when paired with a premium high-end casing that offers more than 2 USB 3.0 ports on the front. Interestingly, NZXT doesn't make any of those. Aside from that, you have a number of fan connectors as well as two NZXT RGB LED headers for easy pairing with the RGB-enabled coolers or fans. And I also really like that NZXT didn't forget about people who might not be using NZXT RGB components and still offers the standard 3-pin ARGB and 4-pin RGB headers. Here you can see the front panel header along with the onboard power and reset buttons. These are usually included on more overclocking-oriented motherboards, and I would say the N7 B550 isn't one of them. The lack of a postcode readout definitely drops its usability as an enthusiast motherboard. Those who are getting this board would probably put it in a nice NZXT case, so these buttons are really quite unnecessary. Onto the rear I/O, NZXT provides the usual 5 audio jacks along with the SPDIF optical audio port. For USB, there are 4 USB 3.2 Gen 2 10GB ports, 4 USB 3.0 ports, and 2 USB 2 ports. There's HDMI 2.1 as well, allowing you to use the integrated graphics on your Ryzen APUs. The LAN port here supports up to 2.5GB speeds with the Realtek RTL8125 controller. And all the way at the top, you get 2 buttons, Clear CMOS and BIOS Flashback. Nice! And that's it for our overview of the N7 B550. I'm actually quite amazed by this board. While NZXT has clearly paid a lot of attention to its aesthetics, they did not sacrifice on what counts. There are a few odd decisions here and there, like the unnecessary onboard power buttons, non-functional M.2 covers, and the relatively slow secondary M.2 slot that tops out at PCIe 3x2. But hey, the Wi-Fi 6E support is nice to have, and the rest of the board is actually pretty good. That's of course my opinion of the N7 B550. What's yours? Let us know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give us a thumbs up. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and follow us on Facebook and Instagram for more content like this. I'm Vincent Chan from Podder.net, and I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye!